Hello? Hello, and welcome. Okay, for some reason the crowd started booing as I played the intro, but okay, let's kick it off with some boos. Well, we kick it off with some boos too, though. We want to welcome you to another episode of What's Going On Here. Thanks, everybody, for joining. We're stoked to have you here. We have a very interesting episode planned for you this evening, but before we dive in, we have some things we want to talk about. A couple of announcements. Again, we're just going to continue to drill into your head that we have these WizWiser glasses available on our website, as well as some amazing dice sets. You can find those all over, all the way across the sea at basicallygoodpodcast.com/shop. Great way to support the show. Great way to support all of the content that we create. We also have, I think I mentioned, dice sets available. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, go ahead and put !Patreon in the chat for the link to get there. Patreon.com/basicallygoodpodcast. Check out all the amazing tiers there. Again, that is probably the best way to support us. And we appreciate you joining us tonight. Before we dive in, we're going to be talking about episodes 106 through 109. So, if you have not watched or listened to those episodes, skedaddle. Go catch up and then come back and watch the VOD later. If you're watching the VOD now, that's kind of cool. We can talk to people in the past this way. If you're watching the VOD now, we'd love to. Congratulations, and drop in the comments what year it is. We're going to go ahead and welcome our guests this evening. Zach, your mic's a little low. Don't talk to me. How about that? Huh? How about that? How was my show? Thank you. I turned it up. We're going to go ahead and introduce our guests. Tonight, we are joined by two amazing individuals. Our general manager, Chance. Chance, thanks so much for being here. Sir, how you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. I'm happy for the deep dive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're going to do a little deep dive this evening. Chance is accompanied by our famous hero, Hunter. Hunter, thanks for being here. This is your second time on the show, correct?
This is my second time on the show, correct.
Second time correct.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, you've been supporting us forever. I reached out to you a little bit earlier this afternoon, and you're like, easy, I'm up to date. I'm listening to the show right now, doing chores. So thanks for being up to date.
I couldn't be more thrilled to be here. As a big Salty Dogs fan, I feel right at home in this setting. And I saw that the Chronicler sent a 420 ears in the Discord or in the Twitch chat, so cheers.
Cheers. Yes, no. Let's just get right into this. Again, like I had mentioned before, this is going to be a little bit different than what we've done normally. It's I wanted to kind of focus more on having Chance just be here kind of by himself, more on this world. We start off, we'll go through the episodes real quick. We start off with the Tooth and Nail, episode 106. Our heroes kind of entering this tavern and arrive in Old Kintargo. That's a really fun episode. There's I know, Chance, you had mentioned, and I'll just kick it off kind of with this first question to open the discussion for the evening. You had mentioned when we were talking off air that what happened in this episode really was depending on where we decided to port the ship. And we ended up going to Old Kintargo. How much did you plan kind of going into this portion of the city, if you will?
Yeah, no, prep work for Kintargo is probably, I would say it's the most I've prepped since you guys went to the Mwangi.
Oh, gosh.
So, like, the most I've ever prepped, I would say, was, like, that launching off point from when you guys left the Leopard Tribe. And I was, like, where I was looking at the Hex Grid map, and I was like, I have no clue where they're going to go. So I literally had to, like, kind of be a little bit prepared on that end. But no, with Kintargo, it's, you know, it's like it's the same kind of idea, but it's on a hex grid. It's just like I need to be able to say like, okay, there's like I think there's like 7 or 8 districts,
Right.
and it's like there are 2 big ports, or I guess 1 big port, 1 small port, and then based on where you guys go, and I'm sure we'll get to it in a little bit, like if you would have chosen the other option, it might have been a little bit different, right?
Right.
Of like how you guys came to be where you are now. So, but no, I had a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time on the Pathfinder wiki, and they do a really good job of like grabbing all of those proper nouns, like all of the scenic places from past APs and current APs, and putting it all together, and then putting like references in from which book they're from. And luckily, I had the PDFs of the adventure path that all took place in Cantargo, so I
Right.
was able to go back, skim through there, find some flavor text, and the tavern that you guys ended up staying at in Old Cantargo had roles to play in that adventure. And so I guess to answer the question, I did a lot of preparation, and I ultimately was happy with the way you guys chose. I thought it worked out well.
Yeah. Hunter, I as a listener, when we talked a lot about this previous AP behind the scenes, like without us recording. Was that mentioned on air? I can't remember in any of these episodes if we had talked about the old, or Chance had brought up the fact that this was Cantargo actually has its own adventure path.
I don't seem to recall it being spoken about so specifically.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't want. I guess that maybe the reason that I didn't mention on air was I didn't want listeners to think that they were having FOMO, right? And so it's more of like I wanted it to be a treat for the people who were familiar with it, but not necessarily be like, this is the thing from this thing that you'll never experience, or so.
Right.
Yeah, I would definitely say, from a listener, I didn't feel like going into any of the settings here that there was something we were missing from not being familiar with any of this setting. So, I think that's probably a good call, Chance.
Yeah.
Because it was definitely informative, but I definitely felt that there was excitement from the players to be going into this setting. So it was very neat to listen along with.
Yeah. Well, it's I mean, I don't think you guys didn't. I don't think anybody has actually played through that AP. It's just the source materials there. And I think that lends itself to another pretty cool question. There's a difference between prepping in Eladir, where there is no source material, and you can kind of just like have your own heyday party, designing this really cool city, and then having dealing with a place that the lore is already so baked in, and you're just having to make sure that you want to do it justice and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I prefer the way Cantargo is. Like, I love having the source material,
Right?
But it is definitely way more work because I don't want to. And it's also hard. I will say, like, going through the old PDFs, because I'll read like a paragraph of like, oh, this place is like this, but I also have to think of like, that was 4 years ago in game time,
Right?
and after all the events of the thing, so it might have been this way then, but what would it look like now? So I really did grab like book 1 and book 6 and like skim both of them to be like, okay, like does this place even exist anymore? Because I don't want someone to listen and say, well, that's not how it works,
Right.
So,
that's not how things are.
Yeah. But no, I prefer it. So
I love the I think I love the being able to look back. You'd mentioned like it's been 4 years, right, since these events. And so has the city repaired much? Is there projects still going on? Is there, and I feel like as a character, and as a player in this like future, like post rebellion Cantargo, we are left trying to like kind of piece everything together ourselves, like I feel like in these episodes there was a lot of questions that we were asking about, like, okay, so would we know what actually happened, or is this like just kind of held within the city itself? So it was a lot of fun to kind of explore, especially in these first few episodes, Tooth and Nail, and then Old Kintar Go, episode 107. Kind of just those things, and then we have an extra layer of Dusty showing up, which actually, re-listening to that, hearing the excitement from some of the guys on, like, oh, the legend himself. Talk about Dusty a little bit for some context.
I really don't know if we mentioned it on air, and I feel like that's gonna be just like, we're always gonna say that on this show. We're always gonna say that.
We're always talking about this.
So if I am repeating myself, I apologize. But Dusty came about literally in a past campaign in the city of Corvosa, and Jackson, Silas, and Ronnie were they were in one part of the city. They were like levels like 1 through 5, and they were like, oh man, we need to send a message to so-and-so. And I remember Jackson was like, I just look for the nearest kind of like street urchin kid, and I'm like, all right, you see, a dusty haired little, boy. And Jackson's like, take this message to so-and-so, here's a gold piece or whatever. And he's like, oh, I can make a lot of money doing this or whatever. And he just runs off. And then like, it was kind of this bit of like, anytime they needed to contact someone, he was just like always like conveniently there. And then we just made up this mythos of like, what if he is this just like legendary, like Hermes god,
Hermes.
and he just has these crazy, portal powers. And so I mean, ever since we originally were wanting to do Age of Ashes, I was like, okay, what major city can I bring Dusty in? So it's been fun to have him here as a side character.
But imagine if Dusty had been trying to get into Eladir at the same time as Metal Garurumon, and
he's just at the gate.
I did consider like doing Dusty there, but I was like, I don't know, I don't think he fits the vibe.
No, I think Dusty. It really, the whole thing has given me just enough of Treasure Island vibes, and Dusty being right there, coming up to the deck, I think was just was spot on.
Yeah. Hunter, you had mentioned, listening and being a Salty Dogs fan, and I think early, not these most recent episodes, but just a little bit earlier, like I was just like, I think it was when we were boarding the Genie Smile. I was just jazzed. Like I was like, oh, pirate ship!
Yeah.
Like I just love the pirate setting. So traveling the last few episodes, arriving in Old Kintargo at this like coastal town. I guess a question for you even is like, does it keep its vibe? Is it a similar vibe as a listener to some of the Salty Dog stuff that was done earlier?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because both the Salty Dogs arc and the kind of the disparate settings of the Mwangian Expanse and the Shackles or not the Shackles, I guess, but the
what was that?
The Treehouse City, Blood Cove. Yes, thank you.
Right.
Yeah, like there's a particular dynamic I think going on there, especially with the adventurers. So I'm really excited to see like where the adventure goes in maybe a particularly sort of coastal and almost pirate or pirate adjacent setting. But I definitely agree. Going into that sort of coastal setting, coming out of Dreamgate, like I had that excitement too of like Okay, here's the kind of pirate, the maritime adventure,
Right.
probably more in maybe in a little bit more depth. And I think it's really exciting for these characters in the story because I think something that's probably attractive to both you and me, Zach, about the sort of pirate uh mythos almost
Yeah.
is the sort of ambiguity of morality. You know, like
Right.
there's a very
Right.
honest ambiguity of the morality going on, but in the tales, there's still always this sort of golden rule or sort of, you know, ruling moral compass that somehow kind of cuts against, you know, typical right and wrong standards.
Right.
And I think this party, I, I, I think at times, particularly Urkel and Aaron, have been so almost ebbing and flowing in the sort of moral persona they're gonna sort of lead with. I'm very excited to see how these characters play out in this world, particularly up against the triad.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if that really answers your question
No,
directly,
that's
but
great.
I'm very excited about this arc and this
Yeah.
setting.
Yeah, no. So I mean, let's dive in a little bit deeper. So to the nail, you know, we come up. It's right next door to the sweet shop, which is just very
The Twinkies.
funny in and of itself. But we dive in. This first encounter that we have in the tavern. I think it was just amazing, Chance, how, you know, we come in and we're trying to lay low. Like that's the initial, you know, desire of the whole party is like, hey, let's try not to like start a bar fight if we can.
Right.
And immediately we're like, okay, just go up to the bar, order a couple drinks, and sit down. And it's like Whizweiser and then whatever Calere is drinking. And immediately the bartender's like, you're not from around here. Like, we're like, what are you talking about?
Speaking of, no, I gotta say, has being, you know, at least somewhere in the service industry, I immediately was like cringing when Urkel's like, I can just picture like being up at the busy bar and then turning the shoulder. Wait, what do you want? Like, just everybody's worst nightmare at the bar.
Worst patron ever.
I was so thrilled, and Chance was just like, she turns around and pours you 5 beers because as you go in, you're like, let's lay low. What do you want?
Hey,
what do you want?
What did you want?
Martini? Do you have a martini?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
Maybe a pale ale. You're like, oh,
yeah,
God.
you guys are not laying low at all.
Yeah.
Really sticking out.
It's like, ugh, come on.
But I mean, so you've played several tavern scenes, Chance. You know, we go into the tavern, get our drinks, and then there's this Hero Duels game going on. And I feel I wanted to tonight. I want to talk about Hero Duels because we just had our big voting tournament on Patreon, and we have picked Frizzy Gig as our next Hero Duels card, which is huge. But there was a lot of, just last few weeks when these episodes were being released, there's a lot of excitement around Hero Duels. And I don't know if we've talked about it on this show, but can you talk about what's happening in Galarian with Hero Duels? Because we just seem to catch glimpses of it as we go through the adventure. But talk about your dream for Hero Duels and how it's kind of been baked into this world while we're off fighting, you know, the Triad or whatever.
Yeah. So Hero Duels is the latest venture of Bartran.
Right.
And I don't want to go too off into Bartran. He's probably one of my favorite NPCs that are like my own. But he is like a legendary blacksmith that has essentially given up blacksmithing. And
Right.
I think of him almost like a Phil from Hercules, of like, he kind of made all of these legendary weapons, and he basically was like, he's seen like the hero's journey like a million times, right? Like, he's seen like the young knight who wants a sword, and I think he's seen it succeed, and I think he's seen the hero's journey fail a lot too.
Right.
And he's like, okay, I make a sword for some eager adventurer, and then they go off and die in a cave and lose it, and then I also see heroes that make it, and then I never see them again, and they're off, or they're like egos and whatever. So he basically is like, I'm gonna do something different with my life, and he has taken these legendary heroes that are passed around, and he has made card versions of them. And as it's less of a lucrative idea and more of a passion project. I think he gets excited over it. And so when the adventure started, we saw like our heroes were like one of the first people to kind of encounter it, and or one of the first people to play the game. And so he's kind of like settled in Breach Hill, which is small town hero city, and he takes your signature likeness and image that he signed your rights away. And I imagine, like as you guys are off doing stuff, this card game has just exploded in popularity. And so, I mean, ideally, I mean, like for the technical part of it, I want you guys to be able to play Hero Duels wherever you go. So I like it. Obviously, has stretched very far.
Right.
But one of my favorite things has been how the game has adapted based on the location that you're at. So in like Breach Hill, it's pretty much just as Bartrand kind of intended. It's just like one guy versus another, and it's just kind of like a fun game. But then as you notice in Blood Cove, it was a little bit more like if you lose your card. You play for keeps. It's more of a tool to like settle disputes and deals and stuff.
Right.
And then as
Liar's dice.
Yeah. And then as you saw in Eladir, for this kind of like wealthier, higher class, it's like a gambling hall game. Like it's like a prestigious, thing that you do at the casino. And so obviously there's going to be a tournament coming up here in Cantargo, and hopefully we'll see another flavor of the game there.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's so good, dude. I feel like there's so much to unpack in that, but I love how it's changed. And we even saw, like in the carriage, we were just talking before we went live, like the carriage cold open with the two guys in the carriage playing. It's this like kind of equivalent to like really rare Pokemon cards today, or really expensive Magic cards. It's like, look what I have, let me show you my Holo Mythics, and I just think that's so, there's so much life in something that started as kind of like this, like, hey, I'm gonna make this game I'm gonna make this D&D inside D&D.
Yeah. Well, and I think you said a good thing is I like that my goal was like, I want it to be a game that kids could play in the street, and then also that, rich people could use as like a flex, right? They can. So, and that's, very similar to how Pokemon cards are. Like Pokemon, like your kid, can get a pack of Pokemon cards for cheap, and they're all bent corners and, chewed on and stuff. But then, Jake Paul has $1 million holographic Charizard on his neck.
In a case, on his neck, yeah.
Yeah, so like, that's kind of, I want the game to work that way too, where there's such a vast array of the game.
Right.
And then another layer in the story is seeing heroes, even our characters, recognized because of your hero card. I mean, you see that in Blood Cove. Oh, hey, that's Kalere. I know who that is.
Yeah. It's harder to keep a low profile.
That's
the,
cool.
The more popular you are.
That's cool, and it's also super. It's like wanted posters all over the place. like it's you're recognizable not just because of like the way somebody's describing you, but because they can physically see you. They physically can get this image of who you are, which is kind of creepy, kind of scary. As we, like you said, try to keep a low profile.
Like the Hogwarts, the Harry Potter, the chocolate frogs. That just popped in my mind. The chocolate frogs.
Yeah. That's so
he's
funny.
busy right now.
Let's keep going. Let's keep talking. We have Yeah, the episode Old Kintar Go, we've kind of started chatting about that just a little bit, where we finally head off to Sunset Imports and go following Dusty's trail at the awkward NPC pace on our Lime scooters. And we get to see, we've talked a lot about the prep for Kintargo and everything, but we get to see other facets of the city, and I feel like there's a good 15-minute chunk of you describing the different sections that we're traveling through, and it's exciting because, eventually we're like, okay, I'm thinking as we're going, like, I want to go back there. Aaron's like, I want to go visit the Temple of Shaylin. Everybody's kind of planning to sandbox it a little bit, and then we have, going into the Vasterstil docks, or the, I think that's what it was. And then seeing Sunset Imports and kind of doing this, Urkel does this little intimidation game, gets in there, and that whole scene in and of itself was great. I was listening to it again today, and the reaction from the storekeep was just great. But I think getting closer to getting our hands on more Scarlet Triad like paraphernalia, and seeing more of their presence in this area is getting us really excited. How does it feel to kind of to get more open with the bad guys, having more of a bad guys presence that are like the bad guys,
Yeah, no, I have loved how they have done the Scarlet Triad in this book of, it's not unfamiliar that in RPGs, the real main bad guys don't show up until, Act 2 or 3, or,
right.
And I like that because you want to hold that mysteriousness, like, as long as you can. But now we have moved into the phase where it's like, okay, like, you guys are learning enough to where it's like, it's time to deal with them. There's still a lot. There's, obviously 4 more masters behind masks that you guys don't really know anything about. So I wouldn't say you know a lot. But no, it has been awesome to finally have the bad guys kind of being able to control them, and being able for you guys to put up a fight and learn more. So I will say that, like, hopefully by the end of book 3, which will be the midway point, Zach, you and I talked how crazy that is, that at the end of this book we're halfway, like, and that's either like, oh man, we're halfway, or like, oh man, we're only halfway. I don't know how the listeners take that. But no, by that point, I think you guys will have a better picture of what the Triad looks like and some of their intentions. So I think this book will uncover a lot of their secrets. Not, not all of them, but I think you guys will finally get a big picture,
Right. Yeah, I also love, I think one of my favorite things too is in Kintargo, we do have the big bad, right? We have the presence of the bad people here. But there's also these little factions that keep popping up, with the Tengus on the bridge, right? Like, there is Dusty's kind of sharing with the group, like, yeah, we don't really want to be here after dark. There's this group, and they're not the kindest people. Is that how much? I guess how much prep goes into making sure that at any moment, if we make a mistake in the wrong part of town, like, oh, these people come out. I think that's all part of the world. But like, was that compiled into the hours and hours of putting that together, or something different?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of factions in Kintargo, and obviously you have to have a ton of factions if you're going to run an entire AP set solely in a city.
Right.
And so, the River Talons is I think what Dusty said.
Yeah.
This is just one kind of gang, street gang. and there are other street gangs, and there's also well, I can't get into that. We haven't gotten there. But
Some we
there, I'll
haven't
just say,
met yet.
yeah, I'll just say there are a lot of factions, and yeah, I did have to kind of prepare and learn the gist from most of them,
Right.
because you guys are going to encounter some of them, and maybe more than I intended. So I got to kind of just be ready for that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very cyberpunk. It feels very New Vegas. There's just lots of different gangs. And one thing that I'm having a lot of fun with is trying to break down into like motive for everyone. As the Scarlet Triad becomes a big group, the River Talons are a group that we've been introduced to, and there's more that we have recorded, but we haven't posted on just yet. And I'm trying to deduce, okay, what's everybody's angle, right? Like, and where is, like, what is the full picture? And I'll even say, speaking to Helica, for example, is another person, right? Like,
No, yeah,
like the
Nidal
Nidalese
is a
people.
faction.
Let's bring up the map, okay? We have prepared.
Yeah.
We've prepared an extra slide for tonight. Chance, I need you to give us some good, good geography, a geography lesson here on where we are, where we've been, where Nidal is, and kind of like is because Hunter, you brought in a lot of good questions surrounding where are we, and in relation to everything else, and I think it was great. So we're gonna take a look at the map here real quick.
Yeah, so I mean I don't have a little laser pointer or paint tool,
right?
But obviously what we're looking at right here is old Cheliax is kind of in the middle, and that is kind of one of the most important countries, at least for this area of Galarian. And as you can see there's Isker to the east, which is where Breach Hill and Eladier are. And then over kind of towards the west, we've got Ravenel and Nidal.
Right.
And so Ravenel is where, and I don't know if you could zoom in, but like right above the text of Ravenel, you're going to see kind of like a coast with like some kind of big chunks of little islands. But that is where Cantargo is kind of right in that space right above Ravenel. And so Cantargo and the country of Ravenel, they're in a really interesting spot geographically. They have broken away from Cheliax, Cheliax proper to the south.
Right.
And they have this natural defense, the Menador Mountains, that kind of block them from Cheliax. And whenever the rebellion happened, that kind of severed the ties with Cheliax, the heroes from that adventure actually caused a rock slide and demolished the only road in and out of Cheliax and Ravenel. So that's currently still being cleared 4 years later. So as you see, Ravenel is a newly freed country. Cantargo is a port city and is doing fairly well financially, and then they are neighbors with Nidal,
which is more up north of the city,
northeastern,
right? Northeast,
right? Yeah, and so one thing is like now that Cheliax's hands are no longer kind of controlling / defending Ravenel and Cantargo, a lot of Cantargans, I guess you would say, are very wary of these Nidalese ambassadors and diplomats coming over because they don't really know their intentions. Is Nidal seeing Ravenel in this state of rebuilding and weakness? Are they seeing them in that state trying to wipe them out and claim them as their own now that Cheliax can't interfere? And then also there's the rumor that even though Cheliax has to respect the treaty, that Ravenel is its own kind of sacred place. Have they made deals with the Nidalese
Right.
to attack the city because technically that's not them.
Right.
So there's all these rumors, and Cantargo is just in this great state where they're, outlawing slavery, and they are kind of getting rid of this demonic, or I guess infernal presence,
Right.
but they are fragile, and their geographical defenses can only go so far.
Right.
So sorry, that was kind of a lecture.
That was
but
awesome.
I hope that kind of helps the political scene a little bit
Right.
better.
Right. And again, I wanted to get this out there because I feel like we've talked about it. I feel like this has been shared, while we're just like getting our stuff set up for the night and getting ready to record. Like, you're kind of sharing a lot of this, but I don't think there's been a good opportunity in the show to be like, okay, here's everything outside of what Helika's kind of shared with us. And you have to, and even coming from a character, it's like, well, I don't know if he's going to share everything with us. Like, he's coming from his own angle, So like we can't get a history lesson from a or like a non-involved party other than kind of a platform like this. So I think it's great. I think there's so much necessary in order to kind of understand what's going on and what has happened. And just to kind of prepare for the rest of this book, I would assume, on what's happening and why it's happening. Because, it's just... like you said, like how we've been talking about, it's just we are just visitors in this city at this point,
Right.
And it's dope.
Another important piece that I think I do want to say before we move on, is we talked about the factions, and we kind of covered the political environment in the city, and I think a really key piece of information is that the Silver Ravens, which is there is the adventuring party that kind of saved and freed Cantargo from Cheliax and the adventure path. They are currently gone.
Yeah.
They are gone on a mission in the Darklands. Is kind of where is what, and you guys haven't talked to NPCs right now about it thus far, but I'm willing to share that now. But that they are gone right now.
Yeah.
And so all of these factions, Nidalee's embassy, the guards of the government of Cantargo, some of these street gangs, the Scarlet Triad, there is this vacuum where normally there are these level 20 heroes walking around that saved the city, and now they're gone.
Yeah.
And there's no telling when they're going to be back. So, and then that's about the time that you guys have arrived. So really, there is this very, very interesting period of time where something big could happen.
Right.
So
I think that's great. Hunter, I feel like I've been just yammering over the top. Is there any questions you have surrounding these first two episodes of tonight? 106, 107.
Maybe I don't know if this is something that Chance can really go into versus what he kind of just talked about, but as I kind of mentioned as we were chatting before this started, to me as a listener, it is very sort of curious to as we're talking about the political situation, and particularly this, I guess, the House of Thrune that I think is coming out of Cheliax, and we get this glimpse of the House of Thrune being kicked out of Corvosa because of Aaron's past, and in going into the Tooth and Nail, we get a very different sort of glimpse and listener context into this portrait of a queen that's been defaced. I guess, again, if there's something that makes sense to kind of go into, like, what can we as listeners pick up from the sort of general world of how the House of Thrune reign and or expulsion of that reign might have looked like out of Corvosa versus Cantargo?
Yeah.
That's so good, dude.
Yeah, that's a great question. So honestly, they're a little bit the same, in how they were done because essentially they were both successful rebellions. Um, and I would say they were equally as messy, to be honest.
Right.
I just from kind of skimming through this adventure path, which I would love to run. I think it's a very fun story. Um, but
Prequel AP.
yeah,
Prequel
yeah.
AP.
I'll just say that the the way that Corvosa's happened is that it starts with the king dying, and this queen who is kind of like she's a Chelish noble that like marries the king recently, and then he dies, and she assumes power, and immediately just like bad things happen. There's the blood veil or pandemic that happens. She like basically creates her own militia of like all female warriors. She disbands the guards in the city. She expels the Hell Knights completely, and they just go to their citadel, and basically her female army just runs the whole city, and it's really up to the heroes to fight back. And essentially, in their campaign, she opened a gate into hell, and a flood of demons came out, and a very Doom-like battle.
Armageddon, sort of.
Yeah, that's how theirs ended. And with this one, it was the mayor mysteriously left and was replaced by this Thrune mayor, and then he started doing martial law, and he brought in his
government.
own. Yeah, he brought in his own power, and he set a curfew. And then there was the Night of Ashes, where they like burned down buildings that wouldn't adhere to the rules and stuff. So, and then eventually there was a lot of the factions in the town banded together, overthrew him in in a similar way. So I would say that, like, again, they're very similar, and that there's a lot of deep wounds, and yeah, they might be able to restore the buildings, but as you'll see, there's a lot of trauma regarding certain things that just like spook the citizens.
Right.
But again, the House of Thrune is this noble household that just rules Cheliax, and I am personally excited in future APs if we're ever going to see the end of the reign of the House of Thrune, or if everything's going to shake up.
Yeah.
Because another fun piece of lore is that the house, or there was the Chelish Civil War, and the House of Thrune came out on top because they made deals with the devils. And basically they created the Order of the Rack, which we know that Alec is a part of.
Yeah.
And they were told to go burn all the books and history and maps of everything that was before the House of Thrune.
Right.
And so really, nothing's really known too much of Cheliax before them. So I love it. Cheliax is one of my favorite pieces of lore, and I'm just biased because I played through in an adventure path with them. But no, sorry.
Yeah.
Again, not rambling, but to answer your question, very similar but different flavors, obviously.
Yeah. Well, let's take a beat here, and we're gonna break up the deep dive lore with meme of the month. So, nope, that's the laugh track. There's the clap track. Yay, meme of the month. We're gonna start with runner-ups because we had, man, the submissions this month were gut-wrenchingly funny. First off, we're gonna give it up for Carsonas on Discord. We have, that's wrong. That just put the wrong image on.
He made a map.
He
submitted the map.
Let me change it for us. Give me just a moment here. Man, we're so unprofessional. That's ridiculous.
All right,
I think
Zach,
that's the charm.
Oh yeah. Zach, while you get that working, I can answer a question from the chat
Yes.
from Big Daddy Jace.
Good question.
I know you don't come up with all this, but how do you plan and put all of this together? Do you bounce ideas off certain people? Surprisingly, no. I don't. There's really not anyone that I talk to about this stuff. I think in the beginning, I tried to talk to my wife Hannah about it, but it just kind of went over her head. I
Yeah,
think.
cool,
Yeah,
bro.
it's like I think Zach a while back you were like it's like me talking trying to explain to my wife what happened in our session that night, and it's just like it's just not gonna
It doesn't work.
So sadly it is kind of just like in my head, but the second that something does, like, we get to a certain point, I probably call Zach or any of the other guys and I just talk it to death, because I'm like, okay, now I can talk to you about, like, I was planning this from the beginning, and
Yes.
So
end of book 2. That whole shindig.
it is I basically just have to, like, force myself to be quiet until it happens.
Right.
I almost dropped my first F-bomb.
My first F-bomb.
My first F-bomb.
So funny, dude. Okay, we're ready. Honorable mentions for this week are Carsonas posting a beautiful rendition of The Tooth and Nail and The Sweet Tooth. This is, obviously, you can tell that this is, if you're a SpongeBob fan, this is the Weenie Hut Juniors next door to the Salty Spittoon. But that is exactly how it felt in our minds. It's very funny. Carson's very good job. We can't give you more stickers. You already got them. That's why you didn't win. No, you actually didn't win because this winner is so good. We have a beautiful, the winner is Jay Berry in the Discord, painstakingly going through the Deesk family tree. And there's a couple of things we have to break down here. Not only is this just incredible for the sake of it's just all of the hilarious Deets jokes, but the family members, if you can tell, those that married in are not D's jokes. They're actual different nuts jokes. So just very thoughtful, well thought out meme
Well
here.
done.
Just, yeah, so well done. I think we spent, like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes just going over it as a group one night when we were recording and just crying from laughter.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Jay Berry. You're going to get some stickers in the mail. Here comes the applause for your Deesk family Deesk jokes. Super fun. If you'd like to partake in the meme of the month running, head over to our Discord if you aren't in there. Believe ! Discord still works as a hotkey for us. Come on,
so.
Join us and get your meme submissions in for next month. But just a very good time in the Discord. It's just a great way to kind of not only chat about what's going on, but also share your funnies. So, again, congratulations, Jay Berry. We'll get those out to you over the next week or so. Big things to wrap up this evening. We do have a few exciting things that happened, and we kind of left on a cliffhanger this week. I definitely don't want to leave that untalked about. But we did the thing we're not supposed to do again. The golem appears. There is a halfling that's discovered hanging in a lobster cage, and Kalere runs off by herself and splits the party.
Classic.
I believe we were all under the impression that this was okay. I think in the moment, all of us were just like, just go. Like, she's the only one that can catch this guy fast. What we weren't really considering was the fact that she was almost dead.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about the guards. Obviously, these guards surround her at the end. We don't really have any idea what's going to happen next. There's a real kind of question mark over, we were talking about, I think, when we were shooting this, there's a very scary thing that happens when the smooth talker isn't present to, like, bail out the party, and the hard hitter's not there to, like, kick ass, and, you know, like, that's a scary thing. And so if she's needing to get out, let's hope she can roll high, I guess, or just tell the truth. I don't know. Like, we just don't know at this point. But tell us about, Chance, I do want to talk about, before we close out here, we've done it once before, but I know that you were excited to do it again, the chase scenes. This is something that you kind of homebrewed up, right?
A little yes, a little no. I think I said in the episode, this is kind of a callback to
that's right.
a mechanic from Crimson Throne AP. But no, yeah, it's a unique way of handling a chase scene in the game, because really it's pretty. I personally think it's lame to be like, okay, I have this movement speed, you have that movement speed, and you're like running away, and like no map really works. Otherwise, you'd have to have such a huge map. And it's like, okay, I spend 2 actions and then I throw my spear, or it's very complicated. So I like the chase mechanic of essentially if they're ahead of you, you're behind them, and you have these like skill checks you make, and if you pass them, then you get closer. And if you fail a skill check, then you fall behind a step. And once you get, 3 steps, then you catch them.
Right.
So I like that a lot. And then I like, having the option of like, oh no, this thing happens, and you have 2 different ways of handling it. And there's different outcomes based on those. So I wasn't expecting a chase. That's why I was just pretty like off the cuff, but I thought it worked out well.
Yeah.
And I just knowing Ronnie, knowing Clary, I don't think it'll be the last chase scene we have. So
she's pretty good at just chasing down those. Well, okay, this had a meaning though. Like it was very important to our group to make sure that a representative of the Scarlet Triad did not get back to Mama Scarlet Triad and let them know we're here. Right. So I think she definitely like achieved that goal. But it was down to the wire. I know that there's that combat is back and forth, and it's single digi modes pretty much all around. So really, really intense way to end. And talking about kind of the golem itself, going back to Sunset Imports, I can't remember if there's like a good visualization for the listener on what happened when that golem first came to life for Frizzigig. He was across the room and separated from the door from us. So like he's alone. I'm looking at a letter. Clary and Aaron are outside. Like the way that Sunset Imports ends is horrifying. Because
who knows where Dusty is?
Yeah,
and that is such
he
a
was
good point.
there and he hasn't showed up
Dusty's
in 2 episodes. What's going on?
Gone.
Yeah,
he's gone. If that is a very good pickup, Hunter. He's not there anymore, which is crazy.
Or has it acted? Who knows?
Who knows? But no, great. I mean, great episodes. Very exciting. I mean, Hunter, is there any last remarks or questions that you have regarding just all of these episodes before we close out here?
Yeah, quickly, just because Chance mentioned he wasn't anticipating a chase. I did think about for a second, listening to the episode where when Aaron cast the ice wall, thinking back, like, when that guy runs, thinking through, well, what else? I had that thought of, like, what is Chance going to do with this NPC when he's blocked off by a wall of ice? And so then it's funny here, oh, of course, well, he runs off to an impromptu chase scene. But it's kind of interesting even just to think about that dynamic, like, what's this thug going to do in this scenario if that doesn't happen, if Aaron doesn't have that spell? But I was a little bit curious, Chance, and this is where, like I mentioned before, I'd kind of been listening, in my re-listen, going through the Mwangi arc. Something I thought about as soon as they started fighting the stone golem was the, I think, dragon golem that they encounter. And so even when they were rolling for the weaknesses, I was already thinking, like, we know what these weaknesses are. was that something that factored in for you when you were thinking about this whole setup? Like, did it, is that even in an incidental way, did you think about like, oh, here's kind of like Gollum Encounter 2.0 for this party?
Right. Yeah. No, I was thinking it. I personally love what they've done with golems in second edition. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that was a clay golem and this was a stone golem. So it's a little bit different as far as stuff goes. But no, I was curious how long it would take before they realized like, oh, this is the weakness and we're just gonna like spam ice spells.
Yes,
So.
the ice what I was thinking of
Yeah.
specifically, like, oh, this ice is gonna just
Yeah.
That's it.
take this thing.
I was hoping that Frizz might throw like an acid vial on it, which I think pretty sure it heals it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
up,
Right.
So I was hoping for one of those, but no, I was happy with it. And I think that's the cool thing about even the people, the listeners might not be super familiar with a lot of classic D&D monsters or even Pathfinder monsters. But through listening to the show, you're like, oh, like that's what that does, and that's kind of like So I think that's fun, and definitely after you've played through, this is my third adventure path. Like me as a DM, I'm like, oh hell yeah, I get to play one of these again.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
I think it's funny too how let's just the simple word changes tend not to set off what the monster is. So what I mean by that is like
True.
Frizz peeks into this room and there's this. I mean, it's an import place, so you're like, there's this like stone statue that looks like it's from another place, and we're like, oh, that's cool. And he just
Probably
walks
imported.
in, But if you were
Yeah.
like, it looks like a golem, we're like, shut that
Right.
door, shut that door.
It looks like it might turn while you walk by it.
Exactly. But that just is like dumb player brain, right? Like just like washing machine brain where there's no.
I mean, listening through it,
Like,
I also thought, well, because you even Chance sets it up perfectly where he's like, roll this. I'm not gonna give you everything because it's definitely like from somewhere specific. So
Right.
like even as a listener, it's like, oh dang, there's some cultural insight that we're
Exactly.
missing out on.
Didn't get any
But
history
then-
on a cool place.
Right.
And then he
But of
turns
course-
around and its head is like turned
Yes,
towards him.
And that's like, oh, is that what he meant by everything? Everything might have meant. No, you notice this thing is looking at
It
you,
is
bro.
a golem.
Yeah.
Really, really fun. I thought that was awesome. I think it's just great writing, just to go off of, if it's part of the AP, Chance never lets us know. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it. Like being, I was like, what? We gonna find a monster in here? And sure enough, But it feels very cool to be like, this, kind of, it's a bad word to use, but like exotic piece, like this cool like foreign sculpture. Or
Sunset
something.
import, all right?
Yeah, exactly. But very, very fun. I mean, very fun string of episodes. As we kind of wrap up here. Thanks for being here, both of you guys. This is exciting. It just kind of is a good kind of. It feels like we're spurring off into book 3 now. Like we're in the meat of it.
Yeah.
We're in the meat and cheese of book 3, and it feels really good. Any closing remarks, Chance, before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I feel like I've I feel like I've lectured enough on the lore, but I do have to say, I said earlier, by the end of book 3, you're gonna know a lot more about the triad.
Exciting.
But I'm already kind of beginning the prepping of the finale of the third one.
Whoa!
I've just got to say that I'm very, very excited for how season 3 is going to end, and I think it'll be a very fun halfway point. So
Amazing. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching at home, watching the VOD. We hope that you enjoyed this unique episode of What's Going On Here. We had a great time. Be sure, once again, check out our Patreon. Check out our store, Basically Good Podcast. It's basicallygoodpodcast.com/shop for Wizwiser glasses and dice. But until next time, we will see you later. Thanks for learning what's going on here. Woo! And